estimate a value by rounding a whole number. Now, when you're rounding, we always look one place past where you want to round to. And remember your rounding rules. If the number that you're looking at is greater than or equal to 5, we round up. If that number is less than 5, we stay the same. Let's do some examples. So we have ourselves a decimal place chart because sometimes that is helpful. So our first one, 2,460 to the nearest 100. So you'll notice 100 is the third place to the left. So this is ones, tens. The 4 is in the 100 place. All right, so if this is where I want to round to, I look one place past. 6 tells me to round up. So to the nearest 100, I will have 2,500. In the next one, I want to go to the nearest 10. Well, the 3 is in the 10 spot. So I look one place past at the 2. 2 tells me to stay the same. So I'll have 5,630. Now, one thing to notice when you are rounding whole numbers, after you get there, so in the first one, nearest 100, everything to the right of that should be a 0. In the second one, it was nearest 10. Every place value to the right of that should be a 0. Right? That's kind of an easy way to check, make sure you're on the right path here. In the letter C, 6,249 to the nearest 1,000. Well, 6 is in the 1,000 place. So I look at the 2. 2 tells me to stay the same. So I'm just going to have 6,000. And the last one is our tricky one, to the nearest 10. Okay, well, the 9 is in the tens place. So I look at the 6. 6 tells me to round up because 6 is greater than 5. So this 9 turns into a 10. 1 plus 9 is a 10. So this rounds up to the nearest 10 of 9,000 because it's kind of like adding when you're carrying the ones. So make sure that you're paying attention to all of the different places and how it impacts further problems. Okay, let's do some word examples. A local junior high is going on a field trip with all 4 8th grade classes. That sounds like a lot of fun for the 8th graders. There are 32 students in one class, 26 in another, and then 28 and 41 in the other two. Estimate the total number of students by rounding each number to the nearest 10. Okay, so to the nearest 10, 32. So the 3 is in the 10 spot. 2 tells me to stay the same. 30. 26. 2 is in the 10. 6 tells me to round up. 30. 28. The 2 is in the 10s. 8 tells me to round up. 30. And then 41. That 1 tells me to stay the same. So when I add these together, I get 130 students. So an approximate here. All right, this next one I really kind of enjoy. We're going to round this one 2 different ways and look at the difference. So Davis travels for work. On Monday, he drove 117 miles. Tuesday was 89. Wednesday was 164. Thursday, 142. And Friday, just 18. Estimate his total miles driven by rounding to the nearest 100. Okay, so we're going to do this 2 ways. One with the 100, one to the nearest 10. And we're going to compare. So to the nearest 100, look at Monday, 117 miles. This 1 tells me to stay the same. Tuesday was 89. Now, 89 is basically like 0 is in the hundreds place. 8 tells me to round up, so that's 100. 164, so 6 tells me to round up. 142, that 4 tells me to stay the same. And 18, 018. That 1 tells me to stay the same, which is just 0. So when I add these together, I don't know why I put a $sign. That was crazy. I get 500 miles. So our estimate, rounding to the nearest 100, is 500. Okay, so now we're going to do this again. I'm going to write these out. We've got 117, 89, 164, 142, and 18. And we're going to round to the nearest 10. Because I think this is important to kind of check this out and see how this differs. Okay, so nearest 10. 7 tells me to round up, so that's 120. Look at the 8. 9 tells me to round up, that's 90. 4 tells me to stay the same, that's 160. 2 tells me to stay the same, that's 140. 8 tells me to round up, that's 20. So now when I add these together, 1, 2, 3, I get 530 miles. So if you think about the difference between rounding between 100 to the nearest 100 or to the nearest 10. Now, I'm not saying every time you do that it's going to be this close, because it's not, right? It totally depends on the numbers we're dealing with. But in this case, you're only off by about 30 miles, and depending how fast you're driving, right, that'll depend on how much time that is. But it's an easy way to estimate. So in this case, it's a lot easier to add up the 5 numbers that are all hundreds. So if you're thinking, I want to estimate something that's going to make it really easy for me to add in my head, then you'd probably round to the nearest 100. But perhaps you're like, oh, I have a little bit of time. I can either work out the math myself or punch into a calculator. Well, you're going to get a closer estimate by keeping it to the nearest 10. So it really depends on why you're estimating, what you're trying to find, and how you can move that forward. So hope that helps and makes a little sense.